Hello, everyone. This is Josh Weatherholt with CDW Esports. We're going to be getting started here momentarily. I have a presentation for you. Um, give it a couple of minutes just to make sure everybody who registered is able to join, and then we'll get started. If you do have any comments, questions, concerns, you can drop a comment and we'll touch base on those, or feel free to reach out to our team at a later date at esports@cdw.com. That is our shared inbox, and we'll take, if you have any questions, want to have a one-on-one conversation with us about your program, we can set something up there. Okay, gonna give it about 30 more seconds, and then we'll get going here. Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and we will be recording this. So if anybody comes in late, wants to watch it again later, wants to share it out with anybody who wasn't able to attend today, you'll be able to do so. And then we'll also we have another one scheduled in February for anybody who would like to attend again. If you couldn't make today's, if you know somebody who wanted to make today's but couldn't, we'll be doing another one of these as well. And kind of the idea behind this was for the REMC contract. We CDW won part of the contract to cover esports hardware. And so our team is here as subject matter experts for esports within education specifically. We work only with K-12s and high ed. We have worked with them around the country. Our team's been around for about 5 years at this point. So we've kind of used that time to develop best practices, learn a lot from people who are living this day to day. And then, with being CDW, and I've personally been a PC gamer for over 25 years, we have a lot of knowledge around the hardware that's out there, what's available, how to get, good pricing, how to put it on a contract, and work with your purchasing department through their approved methods and all of that. So our team, besides the hardware recommendations, we help schools navigate where are we competing, whether that's in the school or where are we literally finding tournaments and leagues in which to compete with. Is this something we can find locally? Do we need to look at more of a national level right now as things are starting to get fleshed out? What if we want to have a more curricular angle? We don't want just more screen time. How do we cover that? Are there organizations out there who will help us develop curriculum even, or are we on our own creating it? And so some of that stuff CDW covers directly, and others, we've just learned over the years and want to share the most knowledge that we can with folks. So that's kind of what our team is here for, and what I'm going to go over with you today. Kind of how to start these programs and what the power of them can be beyond just a competitive video gaming team. So first of all, I just want to say thank you everybody for joining us today. Do appreciate your time. I know we're all very busy with the school year and stuff, so thank you for the time and coming out to hear us. Like I mentioned, our team is focused on education, whether that's K-12, working with folks like Fresno Unified on their robust program, working with Full Sail and their collegiate esports, and just they have a lot of really good curricular programs that touch esports as well, and just working with them on that, kind of seeing what the cutting edge can be like for these programs has been monumental for our team. And we even at times work with, even though we're more education focused, we've even worked with companies like Epic Games more on the industry side of things as well, helping them with hardware that they need to create and manage and push out new titles for folks to enjoy. So kind of some background of where we're coming from and some of the stuff that we've worked with. Uh, this one's a little bit of an eye test for you, but we have in our time that our team has been around, we worked with over 1,000 schools getting these programs started. We're actually starting to get to the point where some of them are expanding or not refreshing necessarily, but kind of, we've been doing this for a few years. Let's take a look at what the next 5 years looks like. So those are 1,000 tiny dots on the screen, but just to give you an idea of, the breadth that we've worked with and how far we've come in the last few years. So, one of the things that I like to do before we get too far into it is kind of level set on what what is esports. Is a lot of people think this is just more video gaming time, more screen time. Students have enough of that, don't they? But it's really more than that. You have a lot of students who are good at football and basketball or debate or different clubs and activities that have been around for them for a long time, and you have a lot of students who they aren't interested in those activities, or maybe they are in some cases, but what they're really interested in is technology and video gaming, and then a lot of them in some cases are so good at them that, like your football players and basketball players, they want to compete. They wanna show off how good they are. They wanna test their mettle against not only students in their school, but students from the school down the road and you know, across the state and across the country. Just like traditional sports, it's gathered a following of young people who wanna show off their skills. And when we start to look at it more like a traditional sport, I think it starts to make a lot more sense of why schools are looking into this and why your students are asking for it. I think that's how a lot of these programs get driven is the students are saying, "Hey, let's start a Rocket League team, let's start a League of Legends team." And so we like those conversations because it's an interesting chance to kind of change our mindset, in education over the years, and it shows that we're about to have somebody change their mindset about what it means to be part of esports and provide esports for their students. Because the first and easiest way to address that part of the conversation is to say that these students are already going home and playing games. So what we're doing is leveling the playing field, adding support, adding a community for them to be a part of, instead of just going home, playing by themselves, playing with strangers online, that kind of thing. And so what we're doing here, we're not just providing the access to some equipment that they might not have already, but we're building more of an identity at the school. I think that's one of the really important things, and we especially saw that the last few years of having that engagement and that identity in the school building amongst your peers and not just an online persona can be really impactful for students. Um, and allowing them to do this in a structured environment is also very important. So this helps them build that community, treat them just like any other sports team, and grow as people. So one of the I mentioned engagement. That's one of the biggest areas that we've seen from folks. Getting them engaged, even if it's in that curricular vein that I touched on previously, where we're trying to teach them about something, and it's more through the lens of esports. That can get them excited. Just hearing, if you're using a video game as an example, or we're studying digital media by looking at different video games and kind of going to school on how they would develop that and how we can develop something similar. That alone can get students a little bit more engaged. Another example of people, they'll throw a Steph Curry into like a math word problem, and that can be enough to kind of just that little second of getting the student perked up and saying, "Oh, what are we talking about? We're talking about basketball right now, not math." That can get them to focus, and we see the same things with esports. And that doesn't mean it's an end all be all, but it can, every little bit kind of helps. Is the way that we see that, and we've seen a lot of uh, teachers see that. Another area is school affiliation. A lot, like I mentioned, a lot of these students they aren't interested in traditional sports or clubs. They haven't had a reason to be affiliated with anything at the school other than that's where I go to class for 6 hours a day and then I go home. This is, giving them a team. This is giving them a club where they're proud to be affiliated with their school. In a lot of cases, the first time they've ever been affiliated with their school. This was at TCEA last year, where we had some local high school students come out. They led a panel and just kind of talking about how the program has impacted them, how, just in a number of different ways. And that was one of the really big takeaways. You can see a lot of them are wearing their jerseys. We had some of them were saying, this was the first time that I ever like purposefully wore school colors or wore a jersey that I got from school. This is the first time I've ever had my name on the back of a shirt to represent my team, and it's really exciting for them. They're talking about this is where I find my people, like-minded individuals who are interested in the same activities and technology and have the same values that I do. It's really cool stuff. And actually, we're just this isn't really related to the engagement, but one thing that I really enjoyed about this as well is you can kind of see on the left of this picture that student who's behind the computer. They were the one who was actually moderating the panel too. We didn't even we were originally gonna have somebody from CDW or their teacher or somebody kind of manage that and mediate the conversation. But through that's the person who runs their Twitch stream. And because of that, they've gotten very comfortable with public speaking, kind of doing things on the fly and being that front facing contact. And it was really impressive to see somebody, they just kind of came in there like, no, I got this. And they did have it. They did a great job. And I'm not knowing that person beforehand, but I'm not sure that, when I was in high school, I don't think I would have had the confidence or the ability or the skills to get up there and handle that in front of hundreds of people, let alone doing it as well as they did. So it's really cool opportunities, and I think some of those more community driven aspects are very important for these students. We also get game specific skills. Believe it or not, that may sound silly, but so hopefully we can see the video. I know sometimes it gets a little choppy when sharing it online. But so this is a clip from Rocket League. You'll often hear it referred to as soccer with cars for those who aren't as big of gamers. That's what it is. You see the car flying around and knocking a ball into the goal. But what we're talking about with game specific skills are there are games where it's not as easy as just picking up and button mashing. There are certain things you need to learn. And in this clip, you see them flying around through the air and hitting the ball at different angles. And that's one of the things that I really love about Rocket League is it's easy to pick up and just drive around and knock yourself into the ball, but it's very difficult to become this good at it. You have to work at it the same way that players are working on their three-point shot for basketball, or they're working on their long ball for baseball or football, or they're working on their sprinting and things like that. It's not just pick it up and you're good at it. There are skills, there are coaching avenues. And one of the other things with it is identifying that within yourself and setting goals for yourself and basically teaching yourself how to learn. I think a lot of us in the educational field know that it's not as simple as just picking up a book and learning it. You have to be curious. You have to develop that curiosity, and you have to learn, how do I make sure that I retain this information? How do I make sure that I'm always improving it? And I do it once and I move on. How do I apply that 10,000 hours mindset? And we see a lot of students and a lot of just people in general who'd say, I can get into getting good at games, and that can help them out with other avenues in life. So that slide's on there twice for some reason. Human skills are another important aspect of that, often referred to as soft skills. I'm not a big fan of that term because a lot of times, we're talking about communication, leadership, the ability to take constructive criticism or give constructive criticism, just a lot of things that we get from traditional sports and kind of take for granted that we can apply to other clubs and activities as well. And when we're talking about students who just go to school and then they go home and they don't engage with anybody else, a lot of times they're lacking these skills. So these are things that they're going to be getting from these programs as well, kind of tying back to the thing with the students and their school affiliation. Having that, a lot of them, not only is that the first time they've purposefully worn school colors, but that's the first time they've been on a team. That's the first time they've had to go through a strategy session and have somebody tell them, hey, your rotation on that last play was wrong. In the future, we need you to do it like X, Y, and Z because of these reasons. That might be the first time that they've ever had somebody tell them, you're doing this wrong in the game and I need you to do it differently. And that's an important moment for them, and an important ability to take that criticism without being personally offended, or to be able to give that criticism themselves to a fellow student and peer. There are also ecosystem skills that we're seeing in here, and a lot of that is more tied into the technology that they're getting their hands on. A lot of time, the gaming PCs that we're using, they aren't the craziest PCs. You don't have to go out and get a supercomputer, but they do tend to be higher end than what we typically see in schools. They do have more relevant components in there than what we would be using to, run the internet and word processing and Excel and things like that. The other thing with it that I tend to find, especially around the PCs versus the console aspects, are with PCs, you tend to learn what's in the box. It's, with consoles, you just kind of plug them and play them, and new games come out, and eventually they don't work on that generation of console anymore, and you upgrade it and you move on. With the PCs, it's important to know, what kind of graphics card do I have? Maybe that's why this game isn't running as quickly, or maybe that's why this game runs quicker on this PC versus that PC. What kind of RAM do I have? That's going to determine, how heavy of a game can I play, and for how long can I play it before I might need to restart. There are different things that you learn from that, and the upgradability of them as well is not only important for the schools on these refresh cycles, but it can also be something that you can inject into the classroom. When it comes time to, let's say you want to get a little bit more life out of your PCs, upgrading the GPU and the RAM are really great ways to extend that life for a couple more years. And that's something that where you can say, hey, students, let's all gather around and look into this box. Let's look at this old graphics card, understand how it plugs in, how it gets its data sent through, what's it actually doing when we're playing a game, rather than just, putting graphics onto the monitor for us. How is this actually working? Same thing with the RAM. Let's let you guys snap the RAM into place and kind of understand how these pieces work, and maybe someday you'll be building your own things like this. So those ecosystem skills can be very important. I think, just from my experience being a gamer, that's probably one of the most important lifelong skills that I've developed. And something to think about with this too is, we're not, the end goal of this is not to make professional gamers necessarily. You're going to have students who are good at it and go on to play in college, maybe even make some money on a professional or semi-pro circuit. But for the rest of the students, it's similar to traditional sports. We have coaches and analysts, we have general managers, IT support even. Obviously you need it for esports, but the Super Bowl doesn't run without IT support, or marketing people pushing it out, selling advertising, things like that. And it's the same thing with the esports industry. It's a whole other industry that has all of these different professional avenues for folks to pursue and still be close to the sport. And a lot of players and students are starting to, not starting to, they were already moving into this, but they're keeping their eye on that and saying, hey, I can be into video games and still, follow my more professional skills of marketing or something. I'll just work for an esports league or a professional team, or something like that. So just to kind of recap, those: engagement, affiliation, game specific skills, human skills, and ecosystem skills are just some of the many benefits that you're going to get from these programs for your students. Now, how do we build a successful program? That's obviously a very important question, and that's the cornerstone of kind of what our team is here for. So how are we building it? I'm going to go through kind of a couple of different program types first. Successful instructional programs. So first, we're going to have to research things. What is this? What are our goals? Are there instruction materials? How big do we want this to be? Is it all at once? Do we need to kind of roadmap this out and go one step at a time? Are we going to be doing any professional development around this? Is there any professional development that we, the teachers or faculty members, can get before we launch this? Same thing with supplemental materials. Is there any kind of management system that we can be running? And what does this look like going forward? What happens if the person who starts the club leaves, or in a lot of cases, with like a student run club, what if they graduate? Who's going to pick up the mantle and make sure that this continues into future years? That's how you would start any kind of instructional program. And it's no different if you're thinking about, how do I start an esports class, or how do I inject esports into a current class? Successful extracurricular programs are, some of these things are going to be pretty similar, but a lot of times it's that passion for the game. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been talking to somebody and, we're starting an esports program. I kind of got voluntold because I'm a big gamer. I play all the time at home. I talk to my students about it, and now they're asking me, can we start a League of Legends game, or a League of Legends club, or a Rocket League team, things like that. So that passion for the game is a lot of times where it starts, especially when we're finding our teacher or our faculty member who will kind of support and run the club, or at least provide guidance. We need training in there. We need practice facilities, possibly equipment, uniforms, apparel, that hardware is very important, that the PC hardware especially. And we always tell people, it's, there are There are certain levels that you want to hit to make sure that you're not at a competitive disadvantage. We call that getting into cleats. You want to make sure that you are in cleats for this. The same thing if you were on a soccer team, you wouldn't run around in tennis shoes. You'd slip and slide all over the place, and you would be at a competitive disadvantage against the team that's using cleats. Same thing for esports. There are certain specs that we want to hit on the hardware so that the games run smoothly. But anything above that, it's not going to, if you go above and beyond that, it's not going to make it run even more smoothly or make you even better. It's just kind of a nice to have. And that's a lot of what our conversations are around, is just kind of helping hone in on what is that appropriate range. Same as you would have for any other kind of extracurricular club. Getting that community support, sports boosters, people coming out to games, watching them on TV or Twitch. That's important. We want to make sure that they're feeling part of the community, and that the community is interested in the sport that they're playing, and wanting to see it go further. Helping them get into competitive leagues. Obviously, I talked about students who are they're not only into video games and are good at them, they want to show off how good they are, and they want to compete. And in some cases, if we're talking about your high school students, some of them might be looking at getting collegiate scholarships even to compete at a higher level, and maybe even earn some money in some of the bigger tournaments. I mentioned sports boosters, feeder programs. That one we're talking more about, if we are going to have a high school program, do we want to consider having a middle school program so that we can have people kind of feeding in and making sure that high school program is constantly running? When I'm talking to colleges, I always tell them, get in touch with your local high schools, because they will feed in, some of those students will feed into your program and help make it, help it self-sustain as well. And it's not just a reach out, so it's go support them, help them, with career day stuff, go out there and help them run events. If you have if they're running into trouble streaming to Twitch so that people can actually watch their games, send one of your people from your media team out there and talk through it with them, or have them jump on a call and talk through it with their team, and just see where you guys can help. You never know where those connections are going to make an impact down the line. And I touched on scholarships, considerations, that pipeline. That is a thing that is it's not starting to pop up. It's been around for a little bit, but there's about $20 million in scholarship. The last time I heard a dollar amount for it, around from collegiate programs, going for gamers. And actually some programs are even starting to provide scholarships for, the streamers as well, for more of that broadcasting element, just because that's how we promote the program. There's a lot of sponsorship avenues for that. So that's a very important piece too. And so how are a lot of these programs started? I mentioned the passion and knowledge of the game. That's where probably 75% of these programs start, are teachers or students are really into gaming. They're into talking about it. They're into talking about the technology that they have access to with gaming, and they want to spin something a little bit more formal up out of that. A lot of times it's an esports club. Sometimes it's tabletop gaming. I was talking to somebody the other day that they have a gaming club, but they don't really play games. They come in and talk about games, which I thought was interesting. So that passion and knowledge for the game is where it all starts, though. This is the same list as before, but these are the things that a lot of times we see kind of skipped over. We think, oh, he's passionate about it. He has a computer at home. Let's have him start the esports club and go. And we oftentimes get, how do I buy these PCs? I got to get these on. And it's like, okay, hang on, let's take a step back. Have you done research into this? Have you kind of figured out what your scope is going to be? How big is this going to be? Is it all in year one, or do we need to stage this out so a little bit happens in year one, we scale up a little bit more in year two, and then we're fully up to what our goals are in year three? Where are the professional development? Who's supporting this? Those kind of questions are important to think about when you're starting these programs. And going, the passion is good to start with, but we need more than that. And these are, same thing. These are all of the same things that you would have for any traditional sports. If you're creating a football team or a basketball team or track team, you would go through all of these. And it's the same thing for esports. Before you're getting started, think through each and every one of these. Some of them might not apply, but still think through them and just make sure, so that you're not caught off guard down the line when it's like, oh yeah, we need to join a competitive league, and that has yearly fees for us. We just completely forgot to think about that. Now we need to find out where that money's coming from, or maybe we need to find boosters to help sustain this. Just thinking through these things and planning it out does so much for you down the line. And just, we're going to get into some of the relationships that how do we get these programs started. Those were some of the basic more concepts. where are the relationships found that can help us with this? And I think this is a great quote from Chris Turner, who runs the esports program at Southern University Law School. Rome wasn't built by one man. Relationships are your foundation in the building process, and that is so true in the esports world. So we're going to go over some partnerships to establish, whether you have them now or even if it's not something where they're helping out on day one, just getting them in the loop, getting their feedback can be really important. So community and local businesses is a great place to start. Um, you do have larger business partners for some things, but they aren't always as in tune with what's going on in your local community the same way that local businesses can be. A lot of times these people are boosters for your traditional sports, and they might be interested in helping out on an esports program as well. I've especially seen where technology companies or storefronts that sell some more technological or kind of nerdy things. A lot of times they're more interested in this too, whether it's because it directly impacts their business with people who shop there, or if it's an IT company. I've heard about some like PC manufacturers that have helped support esports clubs in their local communities because they're hoping that will train up the youth in their community who will then turn around and get jobs at their company, and they are helping invest in the future of their employees. So that's one way that might make sense for you. Another a pretty cool thing that I saw over the summer at a little shop was it was a shop that sold telescopes and geodes and computer parts and robotics kits and all manner of kind of the whole nerd umbrella, which was really neat to see. And at the front of their store they had a box for donations for the local robotics club, and I was asking the owner about it. What's I see that you guys sell robotics kits, what's kind of your relationship there? And he said, not only do they buy their gear from us, which is really important for our business, and we give them some sponsorship money in return. We also have this in case anybody wants to support it. It also helps promote the club for them, and for people who aren't aware. Just a really neat thing that it literally just took them putting a cardboard box and a little index card with a sign on it that says, donations for local high school robotics team, to get some extra attention and funding for that team. I thought that was really cool. And if you guys have anything like that in your local community, I know not everyone does, but if you do, that's a good place to start. Faculty and staff stakeholders are a huge part, as most of you can probably imagine. It's not just that one teacher. A lot of times we have to get the admins on board. The superintendent or the principal may or may not have pushback. They may be really excited about it, and you find that you have even more support than you realize. Getting people like IT and facilities involved as well can be really important. IT is going to help you establish, these are the PC brands that we like and are standardized on. You can't go outside of that. Or maybe we can go outside of that, and that's still good to run by them. They can tell you what rooms are already set up for network drops and power and HVAC that we might want to keep in mind. They can tell, oh, we've actually been looking at revamping this old lab. Let's go there and do that. Facilities folks can help along those lines as well. And then when you're actually getting the room set up, I've seen them come through in the clutch with paint jobs, fixing ceilings and adding lighting in there, helping assemble furniture and lay it all out for us. Things like that we might not be thinking of until we get the equipment, but running it by them ahead of time that's going to be better than them coming in the 11th hour and saying, hey, I'm not painting that room, or I'm not building those desks. So getting them involved early and often, highly recommended. There are also some nonprofit organizations out there that I highly recommend checking out. A couple of them that are ones that we're partnered with, NASIF and NACAD. NASIF is the North American Scholastic Esports Federation. They are more focused on, how do we inject this into the classroom? They have free resources to kind of guide around different subjects and how it pertains to esports. They've also been touching on some competition in some areas, so that's something to keep an eye on. But they also have a really great community of people who are focused not only on the esports side of things, but the educational side of things. So, and they are free to join. So I would highly recommend to everybody out there, go to nasif.org, join up with them, find people in your area who are doing this and get into the community. They're one of my favorite orgs, just hands down. And then NACAD, no nothing against NACAD because they're one of my favorites too. They're the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors. So they're a little bit more focused on the competitive side of things and really running that more of the day-to-day. How do we compete? How do we compete at high levels? How do we run these programs the same way? How do we get these programs to run the same way the football team does or the basketball team? Especially on the collegiate side, we want to become the Alabama football of esports kind of thing. Where do we start? And these are where the like-minded individuals are coming and sharing best practices and helping the sport grow and setting up tournaments with each other and things like that. So great organization to join as well. If you are a coach or a director, or you're looking into getting into that, great community and good resources to get in touch with there. Another spot, athletics directors and coaches. A lot of times these programs are housed in athletics. It can kind of depend. Sometimes it's more in like a student affairs department. Sometimes it's in, computer science classes. But athletics directors and coaches can be important. And we don't need them to understand gaming or anything like that. A lot of times that's the pushback I get is, I don't do esports. I worry about stick and ball sports. We don't need them to know esports. We don't need them to know gaming. It doesn't matter if they've never played a video game. What we want them for, they know how to hire coaches. They know how best practices around practice schedules. They have codes of conduct for their other teams that we can easily apply to esports, making sure that we have GPA standards, that we have attendance standards, that we have behavioral standards that we're establishing early on. That way, if anybody, they're on the hot mic in the middle of a game and they say something they shouldn't have, cool. Good thing we already have these codes of conduct that point to, misrepresenting the school during a competition. Here's your punishment. We've already figured that out. The athletic directors and coaches have all of that information. The other thing that I think is really important that gets overlooked a lot of times is with scholarships being available to the esports athletes, these people are going to know where do we chase those things down? What's the best avenue to getting your name out there for as many scholarships as possible? They have a lot of kind of day-to-day knowledge that other people don't have when it comes to running a sports program. Existing vendors. So thinking of that, who are the companies that are already in your school, whether that's a technology company, or even things like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, they sponsor pretty much every scoreboard across the country for high school and collegiate athletics. Sometimes I've seen them getting involved in esports as well, whether we're setting up like an LED wall or just a broadcasting area in general, something like that. Looking at those vendors that are already in your school and saying, hey, we're starting this program as well. Is this an area that you'd be interested in? This doesn't apply to CDW, that we're on a later slide, but same thing, kind of in that vein. Let's say you buy computers from a specific brand, you're standardized on HP or Dell or Lenovo. Going to them and saying, hey, we buy your Chromebooks. We're also starting to look at esports and we want to consider your hardware. Is this something that you guys can support in some way, shape, or form? That can be incredibly impactful and going rather than just, random companies that may be in the area or that you've heard of and that they touch on esports. Going to the people who are in your school and have an investment already, highly recommend that too. And if there's anything that CDW can help with, with those examples of like HP, Dell, Lenovo, if there's anybody who you're trying to get in touch with and want to run stuff by, that's also what our team can help with. So please feel free to reach out there. These pipeline organizations, I kind of touched on. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I touched on that before. That pipeline between middle school to high school to college, just being in touch with the broader community outside of just your school location or your district can go a long way. Being in touch with your local colleges and saying, hey, we have an esports program. We want to do a career day so that our students can learn about what your students are studying in school. I'm sure they're not just there for the esports program. They're probably studying computer science or, media or marketing or something like that. Can they come in and kind of talk to our kids about what they're doing, how it applies to esports, and, help them see the avenues that are in front of them? Those can be very important. And what I've found, just really quick, I know I already skipped, but just touching back on that, what I've found is more often than not, those collegiate coaches are really excited to help out and have that impact on the local level. So if you're worried about anybody saying, I don't have time for that, depending on what their competition schedule looks like, it might be a little bit difficult depending on time of year. But more often than not, they're really excited to go out there and talk with the high school students, share their knowledge, and even bring people on site to see their spaces, which is really cool. And then, the people who bring it all together. So that's CDW. We work with over 1,400 manufacturing companies. We have local services for anything and everything that you can think of that you might need help with to set spaces up. We're kind of that one to bring it all together, help make sure that there's a plan and that everybody is kind of following up on their action items and making so that we can get a really cool, functional, and fun room at the end of the day. So kind of goes over all of the different aspects of it. We have PCs, accessories, AV and networking, furniture and software. That's more of the actual tangible object side. And then consultation around design, coaching, curriculum, installation services, running events, promoting those events, things like that. Those are all of the different aspects that kind of go into setting up these programs, a lot of which CDW helps with. Other areas we have some knowledge about, and we can point you in the direction of some of those really great organizations that we've come across that can help a little bit more deeply than us. So I'm going to go through kind of the building blocks of esports, what some of these spaces tend to look like. I do want people to make sure that everybody has an understanding of kind of, okay, cool, we've gone over how this gets set up, who are the major players that we need support from. Now that I have all of that figured out, I'm ready to go out and get some hardware. So this is kind of the stuff you would need. And we can have a more in-depth conversation. I can send out some resources as well to help with this. I'm just going to kind of lightly touch on these things. So desktops, that is mostly where competition is happening. There are some console competitions, primarily on like Nintendo Switch, for Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, things like that. But desktops are where the bulk of the competition is happening. One, that just gives us access to more games that way. Two, like I mentioned before, you learn more about the technology this way than you do by just plugging in a switch and turning it on and playing. The other thing is these are high powered machines that can be used for other things in your school than just the gaming. I can't tell you the number of times that, especially on the K-12 side, where this is a CAD lab by day and an esports lab by night. So we need to make sure that it kind of functions for both programs. Just keeping those things in mind. And what I like about that is, one, space on at schools is usually hard to find. So we can't just go spinning up labs just for esports willy-nilly. We usually have to share that space with somebody, and that's fine. I want these rooms to be used 12 hours a day. I think that's great. The other thing is that opens you up to a lot of avenues for funding. There are some grants and ability to get funding just for esports. There are some schools that are saying, same way that we cut aside, a budget for the football team to travel, we're going to cut aside a bit of the budget to get PCs for the esports club. Not everybody has that though. And so we need to look at STEM and CTE funding and things like that. And that, then we can kind of support two clubs at once with that. The monitors with them, there are certain specs we want to hit, mainly to make sure that they're fast enough. The refresh rate is kind of the major spec that we're looking at there, wanting to make sure that it's able to display what we need to display quickly and efficiently, and that we're not at one of those competitive disadvantages that I mentioned before. Mice and keyboards, there are gaming mice and keyboards. For the mice, they tend to be a little bit sturdier. They have a bunch more buttons on them, as you can kind of see with the one in that picture. Allows you to program them, literally have different functions at your fingertips that you wouldn't otherwise on a normal mouse. Same thing for the keyboards. They are a little bit more sturdy. We're usually looking for mechanical keyboards. Is kind of the major feature there that differentiates from the typical keyboard that you would find elsewhere, which would have a membrane keyboard. And so that's like a little piece of silicon that's underneath the keys. If you push on it, it kind of wobbles, and sometimes you get the input, sometimes you don't, if you hit it kind of on the edge or something. We like those mechanical ones because it's just more of an up down switch, more tactile, and you tend to get truer inputs as a result. So if we're in the middle of a match and you're fumbling and not quite hitting the keys that you're trying to hit, that can be a problem. So the mechanical keyboards just kind of help out with that. Headsets it's something that I think is kind of overlooked a lot of times, but with, if we're putting a dozen PCs in a room and they're all playing games and talking to each other and such, that can get really noisy really fast, especially if we're using external speakers. So headsets are recommended, one, to cut down on that noise in the room, and it's also makes it a lot easier for the students to communicate directly to just their teammates instead of shouting across the room or trying to talk over people who may be at the table next to them or something. Allows them to just hear and communicate much more clearly. And when you're having competitions against other schools, that'll be something that's necessary as well, just to make sure that makes it so that they aren't listening in on you a little bit more and things like that. The graphics card, I know it's just one of the many components in a PC, but that's probably the most important component when it comes to esports. And we don't need to go out and get the latest and greatest. A lot of times with these esports titles, they do tend to be a little bit older. Part of that is because we want to make sure the companies are making sure they're balanced well for competition. If you're playing a game and it's all you have to do is this easy move and it's basically a cheat code, that's not a very good competitive title because it's just whoever does that first wins. So these games tend to be pretty well balanced, which means they've had years and years of play going into them and community feedback to get to that point where people feel comfortable going in and playing for all the marbles basically and being confident that it's a level playing field. So with that in mind, the graphics cards are important to make sure that they run smoothly, but you don't necessarily need to go out and get the most expensive thing out there. There are certain specs you want to hit, but and that's something that we can help with. So something to think in mind. You will want a dedicated GPU instead of an integrated one. That's kind of the big difference between a gaming PC and what we would typically see in a school lab is they have one that's just embedded on the motherboard. This would be something that's dedicated, a lot more heavy duty and higher power. Furniture, I'm going to show some spaces that we've done with some of our partners and help design. So you'll be able to see some of the furniture in action, so to speak. But for the furniture pieces, um, it's not a deal breaker if you're not getting new or cool furniture. I've plenty of times we've talked about scaling things up. Plenty of times it's let's get the PCs in there and put them in this existing lab where we already have desks and chairs. We'll worry about making this flashy on next year's budget. Maybe we don't have the budget for it this year. That's totally fine. When you do get to that point, there are certain features that I'd recommend. We have a partner with Spectrum Furniture that I really like working with, and part of it is the sturdiness of their stuff. They've been working in the educational industry for a really long time, and their furniture is reflective of that. They have 10-year warranties on their desks. They're heavy and sturdy. They have big steel panels and wood and laminate. They're really nice. If you go and Google gaming furniture, that's not the kind of stuff you typically find. So there are certain things like that I would keep in mind as you're looking for it. We want this to last and be functional. Good cable management trays go a really long way as well. And then for the chairs, you're really looking for something that's just ergonomic is the kind of the main thing, something that's adjustable as well. The other thing, just going back on the desks real quick, if you do have any students, that need ADA compliance, keeping in mind, they do have like electric sit stand desks and stuff as well these days. That's something that I see a lot of people, maybe they put like one or two of those desks in there to accommodate those students. And then the rest of them, they get something standard, but just something to kind of think about as you're designing these rooms out and thinking about what furniture you might upgrade them with. There are certain things to keep in mind so that you're not having to refresh that very often. And then one other plug about the furniture and CDW and Spectrum is our partner for our blueprint to design process. That is a free service that we offer to kind of help map out drawings and designs for spaces, make sure they're ADA compliant. Really kind of the idea behind that at the end of the day is before anybody buys anything, before we ship anything, we just want to make sure that there's a plan for it. And if there's something that we can help with and help physically lay it out on a drawing, to make sure that this all fits the way we want it to fit and there aren't any issues there, that's great. And Spectrum helps us with those 2D designs and 3D rendering. So if that's something as you're setting up your spaces you want help with, reach out to us and we can spin that up. It's a really great process. I really, and that's actually some of what you're going to see here in a second. Last thing on here, AV equipment. Streaming is a really big part of this. Displaying, having TVs mounted on the wall, either for the console areas or for doing film review, being able to push this out online or to other places around the campus is kind of goes hand in hand a lot of times with these programs. So AV equipment is also very important. That's something else that CDW has a really robust practice in. So I'm going to kind of click, there's like 10 of these. So I'm going to kind of go through them quickly just so people can see them all. But this is one of the 3D renderings you see. We typically put them in, pods of 5 or 6 like this. That way the team can kind of huddle up together. This also functions as a classroom during the day. So that's, it does everything that they need both for competition and classroom learning. Different angle of it, as you can see, because they do use this for a competition area as well. They have like a little broadcaster desk. They have their logos on here. This is that engagement piece that I talked about earlier on. It gets the students excited, even when they're just coming in there for a digital media class. They know that they get to come in there and use these really high powered PCs, and they have the lights and colors on them, and they're sitting at the cool desk, and they've got the logos back there. Maybe if they have time at the end of the day, they'll get to play a Smash Brothers round against their teacher or something. Like, it's a very exciting space for them to be in, whether they're learning or competing. And this is the finished product. They actually end up getting an even bigger logo, which I think is really cool. And this one, I'm going to touch on it again real quick. I know I already talked about the facilities folks, but this is one of my favorite projects because we advised on the PCs. We worked with Spectrum on those layouts that you saw, but then the facilities team is who came in here. They painted those walls. They added those drop ceilings and the LED light strips on them. The teacher went out and bought that vinyl, and then the facilities folks helped them apply it across that wall. That's not a one-person job. Those are the things that I'm talking about, where it's get facilities involved early and often. You can really make these rooms pop with some lower cost solutions than, we can help with the install services. If you would want somebody to come in there and do that for you, that's totally fine, but not every school can afford that. And that's why I really like what the facilities folks are able to do. And I just think this is a really good example of that. This is actually one of the more robust ones that we've done with our partner at Horizon AVL. Some of you may have heard of them before. They do some of the more like unique and really high end spaces that we've seen around the country, both for K-12 and high ed. This was one that they did at Edison High School in New Jersey. They have a competition stage. They have a console area. They have, a functioning computer lab in there for during the day and after school. They even have a really robust production booth. Like, this is a professional level production booth that they put together for their students. And one of the things that I really like about this one as well, because Horizon will, part of their process is they offer up training services, both for the staff and students who might want it. So for the production booth, to make sure that everybody understands this is pretty high-end technology. They want to make sure that, just because somebody's into it, they may not have seen a mixing board before, and they might, just because they're into learning about it, doesn't mean they don't need some tutorials. So they go through with the students and kind of show them, here's how all the different things work. Here's what all the dials do. Here's how you create macros. Here's what you do for your overlays and how you kind of tie it all together. And so they were showing these students this, and then they came back like a month or two later to, they were helping fix something, and then they were also just kind of doing a touch base to make sure, how are things running? Do you need help with any other training, stuff like that? And the students who they had trained up on the production called them over and like, hey, come see all the different, in that, in that month, we've already made 40 different macros that we use during our live matches, and we're doing this and this for our overlay, and we're doing interviews, and this is how we set them up. And they were just so excited to show these people who weren't even from their school. They were from the company that installed it. They were so excited to show them, though, what they had learned and how cool it was. So that's the stuff that, I think we're all searching for, is how do we get these students excited and curious and wanting to brag about what they're learning about through esports. This is one of their spaces at University of Delaware. I love that one, where they have I'll go back real quick. They have the Mario stuff on there. That's actually their HVAC system. But these are some of the unique ways that people are kind of thinking through, what do we make these spaces look like to be fun and functional? Same thing with Kane University here and their competitive space. And then UNC Greensboro just opened up a really cool community space down there where they do competition and streaming and such in their production booth. So I know we're getting close on time, so I'm going to kind of breeze through some of these, but I do want everybody to kind of understand, this isn't just a high school thing. It's not just a college thing. We do have esports at K through 5 and middle school and so on. So I'm going to go through what those look like and how those can grow into the next level and set up that pipeline that I talked about. So at K through 5, mostly playing Minecraft is one of the more popular things, maybe a little bit of like Smash Brothers or Rocket League. The main thing is that they aren't really using PCs. If they are, it's like Chromebooks. But they're doing more of Switch-based gaming or Minecraft on a Chromebook. And it's the purpose of their programs. It's really more about the computer science, the computational thinking, collaborating with each other, that game-based learning that we talked about with like the Rocket League example, just kind of helping the students with, here's how you play these games. Here's how you work together on these games. Here's how we can make you think about other aspects of life through your game-based skills, things like that. Just introducing them to some of these concepts and getting them ready to compete when they get to the next level. Pretty much always are doing internal competitions in these cases. We don't need them to have a rivalry with the neighboring elementary school, but we do want them to be able to compete with each other and focus on their skills. One of the important things with this, another great quote, anything that students can consume, they can create. And that's a big part of the educational aspect of these programs is how do we not only help them with these programs and teach them about this technology, but there's so many things that people are creating just to run these programs. How do we help them with that too? So there are things like Bloxels out there where you can actually, you lay in different colored tiles to create imagery that you will then inject into a video game of your own creation. So not only do you have to think through the art aspects, and with this guy, you have to think not only what does he look like when he's standing still, but when he's running as well. And that kind of shapes how you're going to design both of those images, the static one and the running one, to make sure that it all makes sense and you can see it clearly. What is kind of the obstacle course going to look like? What's the challenge? How do I make sure that it's challenging but also functional and beatable? So that's a really cool game. I've seen a lot of elementary and middle schools adopting that to kind of go over, game design and things like that. At the 6 through 8 level, we are starting to add, PC based stuff. We are starting to add in external competitions in some of those cases. There are third party organizations like Middle School Esports League out there where we can find competitions at a national level for middle schools to be able to join. Usually, Rocket League, I mentioned Smash Brothers and Minecraft for the younger students, but then adding Rocket League in there is pretty good. That's pretty age appropriate for them. You can still do internal competitions though. We already saw this image. That was actually a middle school that we were talking about earlier. It's a computer lab by day and an esports lab after school. Knockout City is one of a newer game that's getting attention out there because a lot of, especially at the middle school and high school level, they don't play first person shooters. It's just not good vibes for those right now. They are more popular at the collegiate level because they're 18 plus and all of that. But Knockout City was kind of a response to the hesitancy around that genre because it's dodgeball, so we're still the kind of the same mechanics of something that you would see for like a Call of Duty or a Halo, where it's point and click, but it's dodgeball instead, so it's a little bit more kid friendly. So that's one to maybe keep an eye on if you have some students who aren't, they don't want to play Rocket League or something, they want to play something more like that. Then at the 9 through the high school level, Rocket League, Smash Brothers still incredibly popular. Those two games are popular at every single level. League of Legends is another one. That one is internationally probably the most popular game competed in out there. Dota 2 is the same genre. That one's also very popular. You can still do internal competitions. I think it looks a little bit more like scrimmaging and stuff, reaching out to maybe some of your local high schools that are in your athletics conference and saying, hey, let's do a Rocket League tournament on Tuesday just so that we can get some extra reps against other people outside of our team. Those kind of things can be good, but then focusing on those external and regional competitions like you would with traditional sports. I have a few maps to show really quick just to kind of show how the sport has grown over the years in terms of officially sanctioned programs, at the state level or some kind of pilot program. So back in 2017, pretty small. 2018, we got a few more. 2019, it's starting to flesh out a lot more. 2020 as well. We almost have the entire country is looking at it in some way, shape, or form. 2021 was kind of an odd year, especially, there were programs getting started, but it was a lot of like at home competition and we just call it a blip year. And then on to 2022, you can see that pretty much every state has some kind of program. A lot of them have, all of the red ones are something where it's an officially sanctioned sport at the state high school association level. Others are doing some kind of a pilot program, testing those waters with the, kind of the plan to get into that in the next year or two as well. So just so you guys can see, this is basically a national sport at this point, especially at the collegiate level. This would be an entirely covered map. But even at the high school level, this is something where in your state, we can find competitions. In your region, we can find competitions. And at the very least, at the national level, we can easily find competitions. So, and then at the collegiate level, I'm just going to kind of touch on this because it does pertain to the pipeline. This is that fully open game ecosystem. They are playing the shooters, Call of Duty, Halo, things like that. They're playing a lot of sports games like Madden, FIFA, basically anything that people want to compete in and show off their skills. The college programs tend to be a little bit more open-ended on that front. Some of them with their varsity teams are more focused on, they only play like 3 or 4 different titles because they really want to hyper focus on those, but they still have clubs where it's a little bit more, the intramural clubs that are a little bit more open-ended at the very least. There are scholarships, there are recruiting avenues there as well for your high school students. Something to look into. There are some good orgs out there. Stay plugged in. .gg is my favorite right now as far as a recruiting platform. So just something to think about if you have a team and you have students who are showing ability. Stay plugged in is actually a great one to reach out. You can actually reach out to coaches at different programs and say, hey, I saw that you guys play X, Y, and Z. I play X, Y, and Z. Here are some of my clips. Let me know if we want to have a conversation. And I'd love to get recruited by you guys. That kind of stuff is happening. They are starting to have like PC cafes on campus as well to make it like a self-sustaining program. But I won't get too far into that. And then a lot of it is focused on, how do we not only help these kids with gaming, but how do we prepare them for future careers in the industry or not? A lot of them are setting up arenas to kind of help hone those skills. If you want to be part of a game day experience, let's get an arena. Let's host competitions with other schools. We'll be able to promote it online and make money from sponsorships and so on and so forth. And we can also help our students with actual real world events where they can be helping market the event, helping set up the actual arena and stadiums, helping with the Twitch stream on game day, running interviews with the players, things like that. This just kind of shows off there are, the athletics conferences at the collegiate level are adopting this en masse. And then into the career, there are professional players out there. That is not really the bulk of them, though. Same thing with traditional sports. It's like 1% of the people who are playing in high school will move on to be a professional athlete in the MLB or the NFL or so on and so forth. A lot of them are for those beyond the game opportunities. How do we take what we've learned in this game and apply it elsewhere? How do we take, you were involved in the esports club in high school and college. How do we take some of those skills and apply them to your professional life? And same thing with the full esports ecosystem kind of ties into that, those transferable skills. And then life after the game, even for those people who were professional players, what does life after that game look like? How can I still, throw out some of my skills? How can I coach up the next generation or something like that? So lots of different avenues beyond just those pro players for people to think about. And then this is a little extra, but I think it's important to acknowledge that because of the technology and because of all of the different things that it touches that we've talked about, there aren't really any limits to what professions or careers or skills can be tied back into an esports program. It's really, what are you trying to get out of it? What programs do you have that you're trying to inject it into? And how does it fit into your culture is really the questions to be asking. And then from there, it's really any avenue you want to take it into. We can tie it back into that and provide, experience and skills and coaching for them. So last thing to just touch on, same thing where you see this massive arena with tens of thousands of people out to watch 22 people play on a soccer field. The same thing applies to esports. We have the players on the field, yes, but there's so much more that goes into what you see in this picture and this game day experience to build out this industry. And it's the same thing for esports. And these are the kind of opportunities that we're hoping to give students of today and tomorrow by building out these programs and helping coach them along. So that's all I have for today. Thank you, everybody, again for your time and attention. Like I said, this is recording, so we'll be able to share this out. If you want to go back and watch it again, if you want to send it out to anybody who wasn't able to attend today, please feel free to do so. And then we'll also be hosting another one of these in February. If you want to tune in for that as well, or point anyone in that direction again, we'd be more than happy to have them. And then if anybody has any questions for us, if they'd like to kind of explore things for their own program and have a one-on-one conversation with our team, that's what we're here for all day, every day. You can reach out to us at esports@cdw.com to get in touch with us. And then from there, we'll answer questions or set up a time to talk and go from there. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate the time. And we'll talk again soon, but hope everybody has a great one in the meantime. Bye.